Good morning and happy Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, December 1st, which is Giving Tuesday. Thank you for joining us today for our first ever virtual career fair. My name is Becky Goldberg. I'm a program manager with the Illinois Science and Technology Institute. ISTI is a STEM education-focused nonprofit located in Chicago, but serving the state of Illinois. We are so excited to be hosting innovators from around the nation today to highlight our idea that innovation is everywhere. It is not confined to a laboratory, a classroom, being in the office, but it's about the people that work, that take risks, that learn from their failures, and continue to learn and grow. We're so excited to be joined today by Malcolm and Laura, who I'll introduce briefly. As a reminder, part of this Giving Tuesday event, our goal is to raise money for our school scholarships. We are working towards $12,500. Want to give a special shout out to a donor that just gave, Kate Bailey. Thank you so much. If you are interested in donating, you like what you see today, there'll be a link in our comments shortly. And without much further ado, I want to welcome both Malcolm and Laura into the stream. Malcolm and Laura are both graduate students in the Biomedical Visualization Program in the College of Applied Health Sciences at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Malcolm and Laura, welcome. Good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Becky. Thanks for that warm introduction.
Of course. Happy to be here. Excellent. And we are so excited to hear from you as you are this great blend of this STEAM innovation. So really blending the arts with the sciences. So I'm going to turn it over to you all. I'll pull myself out and we'll learn a little bit more about what you all do.
Great. Thanks, Becky. I can't hear Malcolm if he's presenting.
No, actually, I'm here, but I can't see anything on the screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Malcolm. We're sharing slides. I just figured I couldn't hear your voice. So I've got the first slide up. Did you want me to just introduce?
Actually, so my screen is actually blue, and I can't see anything.
Oh, no.
So I can't see the presentation.
All good. So we have the first slide up, Malcolm, and I can keep it on here. Can you see it to the left of me right now?
No, I cannot. Let me see.
What's in this view?
Okay, right now the screen is black.
Okay, I'm going to try pulling myself off, and then Laura, if you wouldn't mind kind of getting it started, and then Malcolm can hop in, and we can kind of go from there and see if that works.
Oh, sure. That's great. Sorry about that, Malcolm.
No, it's okay.
Always new technical issues coming up. Well, Becky helps us resolve that. I'm happy to share a little bit about myself, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited about the field of medical illustration, and it's a really diverse field. So I'm so glad that both myself and my part of my cohort, Malcolm Houston, is able to present with me today. Because it is such a diverse field, there's so many different backgrounds that come into our program at UIC, and that will go on to do so many different things after graduation. So like Malcolm, I am also a grad student in the Biomedical Visualization Program at UIC, which is just a mouthful to say. I have an undergraduate degree from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and there I studied fine art and printmaking, but I hadn't actually heard much about the field of medical illustration. I actually wouldn't come to learn about this field until about 5 years ago. So I'm really excited to be able to share this with you now and all the students learning while they're making decisions about where to possibly study in the future. I'd known one girl studying scientific illustration at the Art Institute, And then I read a magazine article about an artist that was illustrating dinosaur fossils for the Field Museum for a reconstruction, and that happened to be an alumni of the Art Institute. So I became super excited about that and started researching more. I just learned a little bit more about what the current field looks like. And before I share a bit about what the current field looks like, I wanted to share a brief history of what medical illustration has traditionally looked like in the past. So I put together a brief historical view of medical illustration, starting with the image on the left from the 16th century, an image by Andreas Vesalius, who's the founder of medical illustration, followed by a surgical illustration by Max Brodel, who founded the Johns Hopkins program and is considered the founder of modern medical illustration. And to the right of that, there's an image by Tom Jones, who actually founded our program at UIC in 1921. And to the right is an image by Dorothy Chubb, who really blazed a trail for women in the 40s in what was a really previously male-dominated field of medical illustration. She would go on to illustrate images for Grant's Atlas of Anatomy. And looking towards the future, we now call medical illustration biomedical visualization, which takes a lot longer to say, but it encompasses so many different fields. I've just listed a few examples on the left, including illustration, running the gamut to animation, to 3D modeling, to medical legal, graphic design, surgical illustration, and web development. The list goes on. I could probably spend 20 minutes just listing all of the things that medical illustration is, but hopefully after this presentation, you'll have a better idea of what it could be. And at the heart of medical illustration, it's really a combination of science and art that visually tells a story. So no matter what medium is used, that's the core. And I did want to introduce you to just a few career opportunities, thinking you might be at the starting point now of figuring what you want to go on to study. It's always a good idea to look towards future careers and look up studios that are making amazing work that inspires you now. This doesn't even scratch the surface of possible career opportunities, but just wanted to give you a little taste. In the corner, Barrow Neurological Institute, for example, is the largest disease treatment, research, and training center. And on the middle top, Radius Digital Science is a creative agency working in the healthcare industry, as well as also VR and Embodied Labs, which work with VR and augmented reality, which is really exciting. So although my path to this program and Malcolm's as well has been really heavily illustration influenced, there are so many more avenues that you could choose from and go on to explore. And just to give you a brief overview of my path to the program, I would say my path has been kind of a crazy loop-de-loop. So I've since learned that everyone's path to the program and to finding medical illustration is just as diverse as the field itself. So growing up, my dad was a New York City firefighter. That's actually his helmet in the left corner. So I always knew I wanted to do something to help people, but I didn't know what exactly. So I started out with an undergrad degree in fine art from the School of the Art Institute. And there I was able to focus on life drawing and printmaking. And I transitioned that into working in the custom printing industry, where I worked for about 10 years. I led a team of people and worked on training material, where I became really interested in the different ways that people learn, both visually and verbally. And after learning about the field of medical illustration, I took a really abrupt turn. I ended up quitting my job after 10 years and started working in the healthcare field as a medical assistant. So I was able to learn more about patient care, and work on my portfolio before applying to the program at UIC. So I knew I always wanted to do something useful and try to help people. And what's amazing about medical illustration is that you get to do that every day. So I get to merge art with medicine and continue learning every day. And this is an example on the right, on the top right, of work for the SIM Center at UIC, where they train future healthcare workers. And it's an instructional guide for the nasogastric tube insertion. And I did want to share a little bit about the application process to our program at UIC. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I have for students is to reach out to the program or the school that you're interested in and start a dialogue. Start that early if you can, because they really do want to help you. And I was able to do that, and in doing that, I was able to get help crafting a plan to apply for this program. And I was even able to do an early portfolio review, which these are some examples of my work from the portfolio submission to the program. And I think that was really, that just really set me up to succeed. So I would say don't worry to anyone that maybe takes a little longer than other people to figure out your route to get where you want to go. And don't be afraid to talk to people along the way to try to learn more, which is why it's so great that we have this opportunity today to share this information with all of you. And I just wanted to share a few examples of the skills that we use every day as a medical illustrator. So I use a really heavy emphasis on figure drawing as a foundation, as well as graphic design. And an example of that on the top right is an image from a patient education piece designed for a hospital waiting room. We also use skills like 3D modeling, and here's an example of an animation still as well. But regardless of the medium that we use, we always spend as much time researching prior to creating a piece as we do actually making the piece. And for me, and for this position as a medical illustrator, that's the most rewarding part. You get to learn something new, and you're constantly learning. So every project you take on is a chance to learn something you didn't know before, whether it's the use of models, or in this case, the gross anatomy lab, where we're able to dissect and draw from life. And the image on the right is a drawing from a heart from the anatomy lab. And here are some examples of how our skills are used out in the industry. This is a set of illustrations for a current research article by the Director of Orthopedic Research at UIC. So with our skill set, we're able to help act as a bridge between researchers, and we can help communicate the information that researchers and scientists want to share. Some other examples are editorial illustrations, like the left side, which is a illustration submitted for publication in the Northwestern Public Health Review. And it's to accompany an article about the extremely high rates of maternal mortality among Black women. And the image on the right is an anatomical illustration intended for textbook printing. And in the center, and then on the right is a public education illustration showing the symptoms of malaria for Northwestern's Access to Health Literacy project in Lagos, Nigeria. So some other examples of how our skills are used could be magazine covers or journal illustrations. The example on the right is a patient education piece illustrating a clinical case of a rare pediatric disease. Other avenues are molecular visualizations or a life cycle poster, such as the image on the right. And I have another example of a 3D 2D hybrid piece about the structure of a GABA type A receptor. And for this piece and a lot of pieces, we use 3D modeling software like 3ds Max, ZBrush, Photoshop, Illustrator, VMD, and so many more programs that's hard to list here. So, of course, COVID has impacted our program, just as it has impacted the entire world. So our whole course is now taught online. So we're learning, just like for this ISTI program, a little space at home that works as a home office and living space. So some of the perks include spending more time with loved ones, pets like my dog Rocky in the right-hand corner. And I also really wanted to take this opportunity to share with you a little bit about the famous coronavirus image of the ball and spike, and share that the medical illustrators involved with the creation of this, Dan Higgins in particular, was a graduate of our program at BViz, and their work was really instrumental in working with researchers to define this structure. And yeah, I've also included 2 links to some really great articles about the coronavirus image if you're interested, from the Chicago Tribune and the New York Times, so you could learn a little bit more about that. And I did want to share that the coronavirus and the accommodations that we've made has not stopped our amazing class from making really inspiring work. And this is it's just a slide to share a small amount of the work that inspires us every day. This is work by other students in our program, and I think they're all amazing, and I just wanted to share that with you as well. And we've also provided a few additional resources at the end of this slide set in case you had additional questions to reach out, as well as our contact information. And now I'll send this back over to Becky. Hopefully our technical issues have resolved.
Hey, Laura, yes. So Malcolm is on and ready to go. So if we want to move back to some of those beginning slides, we'd love to learn more about Malcolm's pathway.
Oh, perfect. Malcolm, thanks so much for being patient.
Of course, of course. Thanks for covering the basics. All right, here we go. I guess we can go to the next slide, to the first slide. All right, so as Becky mentioned, my name is Malcolm Houston. I am a graduate student at UIC. Our program is called Biomedical Visualization. Originally, I'm from Richmond, Virginia. I went to Virginia Commonwealth University, where I completed my BFA in scientific and pre-medical illustration. I also received a biology minor because I started off as a physical therapy major, and when I switched over, I had already accumulated a ton of science courses, so I just decided to keep the biology minor as a nice way to kind of keep my science courses up to date, you know, and just to have as much information as I need going into my grad school program. Next slide, please. So yeah, this brings us to just what exactly is medical illustration. You know, just to keep it, you know, very basic. Medical illustration is a combination of art and science. You know, so if you have a passion for the 2 fields, you know, it's a nice way to blend the 2 concepts. Just, you know, using art to explain science. At least that was my first approach when I started out. These are listed on this slide are the 4 accredited programs in North America that you could apply to. The image in the right is me and my amazing classmates, and they're all so talented and just create the most amazing work, and I love it. Next slide, please. So I'll tell you guys a little bit about my path into this field. So, you know, as a kid, I can remember looking back into like middle school. I guess my journey pretty much started before I even knew it. You know, just find myself constantly in the library looking at dinosaur books and just being amazed by those amazing illustrations and details. And I'm thinking, man, this is so beautiful. How do I create this? You know, and the more I grew and going from middle school to high school, I started getting more into my science courses. I started exploring more into, you know, how exactly can you use science, you know, how exactly, I'm sorry, can you use art to explain science, you know, and the more I learned about it, I got even more interested in the field. But I didn't know that, you know, exactly medical illustration was a degree I could do in the undergrad level. So I started out as a physical therapy major, and I wanted to do a double major with physical therapy and art. But when I spoke to my advisor, she recommended that actually combining the two would have been too much of a workload, and that would have kept me in school for a very long time. So when I realized that my school had this degree on the undergrad level, I immediately started, you know, making preparations to transfer over, you know, to that field. And I went through the portfolio process to get into the program. And once I got in, I started on this path, and I never looked back. You know, I was fortunate enough to where my mentor in the undergrad level also did medical illustration, but her path was more specific into medical legal illustrations. So I was heavily influenced by that as well. So when I started my master's program, I went in with the mindset that I really wanted to do medical legal. And when I get to that point, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about, you know, how I've actually grown, and I now want to do a lot more than just medical legal. You know, so when I get there, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about it. Next slide, please. You know, so as I mentioned, if you have a passion for biology and art, this is the perfect, you know, field for you. I've always loved the idea that I can use, you know, art to explain science, because science can be a very complex and scary topic, and most people don't quite, you know, grasp it, or they might think it's too difficult to even want to learn it. But you know, if you can take a beautiful, you know, image, or just a painting to help explain maybe a difficult scientific concept, that helps, you know, make it a little less scary, and you actually want to learn it. And the graphics are also so beautiful. It keeps you engaged, and you want to keep looking at it, you know. So of course, coming from a science background and just loving animals and biology, you know, the poster on the right was one of my first attempt at actually creating a scientific infographic, just to kind of show this species of frog and how they interact with the environment, and you know, what is so special about them, what makes them so poisonous, you know. So that was the approach I was taking here when I was working with this project. And of course, when you're going into your master's program, you don't necessarily have to have an exact designated, you know, a path that you have to take. However, it will be beneficial to you to at least have some like science courses under your belt, you know, as well as some art classes, because when you're applying to the art program, you are required to have a portfolio. You're required to have to take the GRE as well. So if you use the time in your undergrad to maybe get some science courses and some art classes under your belt, that will definitely, you know, help you out when you're applying to this program, because then you know what, you might have a better idea of what they're looking for and how to go about creating your portfolio to make it, you know, as polished as possible before you apply to the program. You know, of course, the programs, they all have their you know, separate admission requirement as well. So if you know, as my colleague mentioned, Laura, you know, if you do decide to go down this path, definitely start to research the schools you want to go into, and you know, and see what their requirements are. That way you can get started early. And it never hurts, because when you do get started early, you can reach out for some feedback on your portfolio to make sure you're going in the right direction. So when it's time to apply, there will be no hesitation. You know, you know for a fact you have a strong portfolio, as well as everything you needed before you got into the program. So definitely a little, you know, thing to keep in mind if this is something you would like to go into. Next slide, please. And you know, so more into my style of work. You know, I'm definitely more into the illustration path and a little bit of 3D modeling. I never went down the animation. You know, it didn't speak to me as much as just, you know, simple drawings, or just using static images to maybe explain a certain procedure, or just, you know, just using these clear graphics to really help the audience understand what exactly I'm trying to communicate. So I was definitely drawn to more just basic drawing skills. You know, so that's where I'm currently at right now. Next slide, please. And just basic skills that we use in like a daily task. Personally, it always starts off with like research, and going into grad school, I think that was one of the biggest things I had to learn was how to research. Everyone thinks they know how to research until you're actually told to do a research, and then you realize, oh wow, this is actually very difficult. So from every project that we've gotten to work with in grad school so far, and every project I will continue to work with throughout my career post graduation, you always have to start off with like research, because you have to first understand your subject and what it is that you have to convey to the audience before you can even go about creating anything. So that will be the first step there. At least that was how I understood it when I got in. First, it starts with the research. That will be the first skill set you learn, and then we get into storytelling. The images and sketches you're going to come up with have to be able to convey a certain message and explain the concept that you're showing on the poster or on the illustration. So definitely a strong storytelling sense is absolutely necessary if you're going to go into this field. And just basic things like knowing how light and form which can interact with a certain object, and just like if you took a light and shine a light on like a sphere, how does the light revolve on that surface? How does this like a separation of light and dark, and just showing how it fits within that space. So definitely spatial awareness is another skill set that we have to constantly use in this field. And you don't realize you're even doing it sometimes, because it's become so second nature to you. But the more you like practice visualizing things 3D space, that will definitely be a good way to progress into the field, because all those skill sets would definitely come back and help you out as you move from one project to the next, or working with different clients, or even creating something new that has never been done before. You're definitely going to need a little bit of imagination to really convey the subject matter. Next slide, please. And if you're into cellular stuff, so I've always wanted to do a lipid bilayer. So in this piece, I'm showing more of like the structural representation of a bilipid layer for a specific gram-negative bacteria. So I've always been drawn to painterly style of like cellular structure, and this was the first opportunity I had to really dive into that style of work, and I loved it. I learned a lot about just how the different layers within the cells work, and what components are going through in and out of the cell. So of course this all goes back to just the basic research. I had to first research this topic before I could even start drawing, because you have to understand what you're doing before you can start doing it. So research will forever be my top skill I will take into every project, because it definitely comes down to how well do you understand the subject matter before you can even teach that to somebody else. Next slide, please. Another skill set that I'm really starting to get into is some 3D modeling. I loved it. I'm definitely working on getting my pieces as polished as possible. But one thing to keep in mind is it's a constant learning process. So you don't ever feel like everything has to be perfect in this setting right now. Because you have the rest of your career to kind of grow, and learn, and get better with things. But this was my first actual attempt at 3D modeling with creating a information poster, and I wanted to design something to kind of educate the audience about the Ladybug's life cycle. And this piece was really cool, because I got to try out a new software called ZBrush, and that was extremely fun and very engaging. You sometimes you get lost in a program and you don't even realize it's been 9 hours of work, and when you check your time you realize, oh, I haven't eaten lunch yet. So you should probably take a break from it, just to kind of gather your thoughts and then get back to it, because you can easily get sucked in trying to fix things, and you don't realize how much time has gone by. But 3D modeling is definitely becoming one of my favorite things to practice with, and I wanted to share this piece with you guys as well. Now, next slide, please. Impact of COVID. So when COVID first started, I was hesitant because I don't do too well with online classes. You know, I've never liked it, so I wasn't too sure how I was going to you know, adjust to this new setting. But after a month, I realized it was actually very helpful, because with everything being online, you have all your recorded lectures and your recorded classes, and instead of you emailing your teachers up to ask a million questions, you can just go back and rewatch the videos that they had out, and you can pretty much teach yourself by just, you know, practicing over and over again without having to really, you know, ask too many questions to somebody, or feel like you're, you know, you're bothering somebody with, you know, a ton of questions. So that was definitely one of the most positive impact for COVID that I thought, education wise, because, you know, you can just go back and rewatch these videos that they've recorded for you. And our program did such an amazing job. You know, they made sure we had everything available to us. You know, they recorded every lecture that we needed before it was even due, you know. So that was definitely a nice way to go into it. I think because of that, they definitely helped take the stress off of us, you know, and just kind of being anxious about switching to online, and not having the hands-on experience that we really thought we were going to have. But I think so far, you know, we made the most of the situation, and, you know, the learning didn't stop. You know, if anything, I think we've gotten more out of it, you know. So I'm definitely thankful for the quick turnaround from my from the department, you know, and just trying to help us get through this situation here. But the learning did not stop at all, you know. But I wanted to leave you guys with one little tip here. Is this piece on this slide is actually my first attempt at a medical legal illustration. So as I mentioned, my mentor in undergrad, she also did a similar line of work here. So when I went into my master's program, I thought this was for sure 100% what I wanted to do, and I still want to do it, and I still love it. However, because I've been exposed to so many more options in grad school now, I have a wider range of things I want to pick from, you know. So just my little tip to you is, if you are going into something in life, you know, and you're not too sure about it, don't feel like you have to stick to it. You know, it's not permanent. You know, you can learn it, you can love it, but if something else comes up and you also start to like that, it's completely okay to take a step back and learn another skill set, or just, you know, to learn something else that you feel like you might fall back on later in the future. So medical legal will always be one of my first passion, and I hope I get to work with more clients in the future. But I'm also thankful for all the other exposure I've gotten since I started the program. So now I have more things I could work with, you know, if I do decide I didn't want to do medical legal anymore. But that was my little tip to you guys, you know. So I hope it helped. You know, it was a pleasure showing the works here today, and I hope you guys have questions for us, and you know, I hope we can answer as many as possible with the time that we have. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that.
I personally enjoyed that. That was so mesmerizing to see some of y'all's works and sharing some of your classmates as well. So I have a ton of questions that I'm going to start with, and then we'll get to some of the comments. You talked a lot about different types of illustration. So I heard illustration, animation, 3D modeling, all of these ways to kind of express. Malcolm, I loved how you put it, using art to explain science. What type of technology or digital tools do you all use to do those types of creations? Are you on an iPad? Are you on a Surface? Do you do it, you know, with classic pencil, paper? What kind of mediums do you use?
Of course. So I guess I would take the first stab at that question. So I've been working on my iPad. I actually purchased an iPad Pro specifically for grad school because I knew it was going to come in handy. So when I got my iPad, I started practicing and I got really comfortable with it. So as far as technology goes, definitely iPads. You know, we use 3D software. The entire Adobe Creative Suites are definitely necessary, where you have your Photoshop, your Illustrator, InDesign. So all those basic softwares are things that are required. It's absolutely necessary if you're going to work in this field, you know. And of course, there are a lot more other softwares out there that it's not a requirement, and those are things you could probably just use on your own time, such as, you know, if you want to go into more software such as Unity, or After Effects, or, you know, Mudbox is another type of 3D modeling, you know. So yeah, there are a ton of programs out there, and you don't necessarily have to use all of them, but I know each program kind of have like a basic standard of what it is I expect you to kind of use. And I guess I will let Laura speak a little bit more on that as well if she has anything to add to it.
Sure. I actually never did any digital work prior to coming to grad school. So for me, and especially after the impact of COVID, everything's all online. Literally everything is digital. It was a huge shift for me. So I learned so many programs. All the Adobe suite, like Malcolm mentioned, the list of programs I think we were introduced to. Our program at UIC did a really great job of introducing us slowly into what you could potentially kind of delve into and flesh out more throughout your time at UIC. But I started with paper and pencil, continued that in the first semester, and then the second semester really jumped into the digital work. I'm most excited about 3D modeling, and the programs like ZBrush were super exciting. We learned 3ds Max, and I thought 3D modeling must not be for me because I don't understand this program. I was hoping we would learn a different program, but I stuck with it. And I think if there's anything I learned from that is keep going. There are so many different programs you will learn. If you have the basics, you can apply that and teach yourself another program you might enjoy more. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
No, absolutely. It sounds like there was a lot out there, which is great. And I'm glad you stuck with it and are sharing, lived to tell the tale of it too. I'm going to pivot now towards research because both of you mentioned the importance of understanding or doing the research prior to ever touching paper or a digital tool. Can you tell us a little bit more about that research process and how you even start it, or kind of what are the steps before you begin that storytelling piece?
So as far as, I guess I can give a general overview of just, how the research starts out. So let's say, for example, you meet a client today and they're doing, X, Y, and Z, and they tell you this is the topic I would like to uncover. So now I guess our job would be to take that topic and research the topic, because we first have to educate ourselves on the topic. So when we're having a meeting with the client, we have a little bit of an idea of what they're even discussing, right?
Yeah.
So that will be the first, basic of there. And of course, like most scientific topics, you have a bulk of information that you want to uncover, but our job will be to simplify that, right? So now that we've like done that research, we have to now break it down into even smaller chunks and take down the most important parts, because we don't want to convey the entire research or the entire topic. We just want to convey the most important parts of the topic to help the audience get a general understanding of the big picture. So so just at least having a basic understanding of what your client might be discussing is always a good idea. And we use is always scholarly articles. We use a lot of PubMed to do research, because you want the information to be medically accurate. That's the whole point of the field, So whatever the most accurate information you can obtain to educate yourself on that subject matter before you begin sketching is always the best thing to do. And I guess I would let Laura give her thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think you answered that perfectly. I think you mentioned the most difficult part is after the research, then condensing what you've learned down into something that's digestible in even just a still image. It's pretty difficult to do at times. But like Malcolm said, we start with usually PubMed searches for research articles, review articles to understand a topic. And then the nice thing about the program at UIC is we are working directly with researchers and people in the field. So we have clients that we're working with where we can reach out to experts in the field and find out, is this accurate? We can share our work and get feedback. And I hope that's something we learn to continue to do after our program ends, to reach out to researchers and work directly with scientists to make sure everything is accurate, as Malcolm said.
A lot of parts of our program mirror human-centered design. So when we talk about problem solving, it's always about understanding that space and then synthesizing. So I love hearing it in the art world as well, that it isn't just about, okay, you have a vague idea and then you put it on paper or whatever. It really is you're understanding exactly what's being told and then how to convey that. So it's a really cool transfer of skills. And I've really loved learning from both of you over this past kind of 40 minutes. I am not seeing any additional comments in our feed, but I'd love to turn it back to you to kind of close up. Is there anything that you'd like to end off on, whether that's a tip for high schoolers or collegiate students who are interested in getting into biomedical visualization, or any kind of general kind of wisdom you want to leave us with today?
Yes. So let's see. My final tips to so like to a kid who's coming up through high school or who's looking to go into this is, don't shy away from it. Go to it. If you if you love biology, if you love art, go to it, because I think as we as life goes on, like understanding things becomes more important, and more often, as things get complex, you're going to need these visuals to help convey that message, right? So if you have a passion for art, if you have a passion for science, we need more people like you. So if you can help us out, add to this field, just help it grow, definitely, that should be something you should take pride in. So if that's your calling, definitely do it.
And Malcolm, kind of just piggybacking off of that, I think the best piece of advice I've actually heard was from another student in our program, and she mentioned this idea of a growth mindset, and approaching everything from the sense of maybe a little less black and white, like there isn't such a thing as success or failure. And I have to say I really feel the effects of imposter syndrome, which I think a lot of people in our program talk about and a lot of professionals talk about. A feeling like this field is overwhelming, because it is overwhelming. There's an overwhelming amount of software, people we work with, what we want to communicate, and just understanding that you cannot know everything. You cannot become an expert in everything. You can find out what you love and explore your passion and learn more every day. But the idea that you're always learning, and the idea of sort of failing up and learning with every mistake you make has been a huge impact in the way that I think about life in this program and after.
No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people can relate to that sentiment, and no matter what they do, kind of approaching it with that new perspective and lens can be really beneficial, helpful, and positive. So thank you again to both of you. Any of our viewers, if you have questions for Laura or Malcolm, please continue to put them in the chat or in the comment. We will make sure they get to the right people, and that your answers come back to you. Laura and Malcolm, again, thank you so much for being some of our featured innovators today. And if you are watching, stay tuned for our next one in just a couple minutes here. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Thanks a lot.